Mark Thompson was a man who loved nature and the secrets it held. He was a geologist, which meant he studied rocks, soil, and the earth. For many years, Mark had worked in cities and universities, but his heart always called him to the wild places where few people went. One summer, he decided to take a trip alone into a very big forest far away from towns and roads. This forest was old and quiet, with tall trees that touched the sky and animals that lived in peace. Mark wanted to learn more about the land and find new things that other scientists might have missed. He packed his backpack carefully with all the tools he needed: a map, compass, notebooks, cameras, and some food. He also brought a small tent and warm clothes because nights in the forest could be cold. Mark planned to stay for a few days and walk in different parts of the forest to look at the rocks and the ground. He was excited but also calm because he had done many trips before like this. On the first day, Mark walked along a small trail made by animals and sometimes by people long ago. He stopped many times to pick up stones and look at them closely. Some stones were smooth, some had colors he liked, and others had patterns like lines or dots. Mark wrote notes about each stone and took pictures with his camera. The forest was very green, and sunlight came through the leaves in soft rays. Birds sang quietly, and the wind moved the branches gently. After walking for several hours, Mark felt tired but happy. He found a small stream and decided to rest near it. The water was clear and cold. Mark drank some water and ate a little. While sitting, he noticed something strange. A thin path was going deeper into the forest, but it looked old and not used. For a long time, the path was covered with fallen leaves and broken branches. Mark's curiosity grew. He wondered where this path might lead. It was not on his map, and he did not expect to see it there. Mark looked at his watch. He still had some daylight left. He decided to follow the old path to see what he might find. The forest around him felt more silent and still. Tall trees stood like guards, and the ground was soft with moss. Sometimes Mark had to push away branches or step over logs. The path went uphill and then down again. He walked carefully because he did not want to get lost or hurt. After a while, the path opened into a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a cabin. It looked very old and almost forgotten. The wood was dark and cracked, and green moss grew on the roof and walls. The windows were covered with dirt, and some glass was broken. The door was closed, but not locked. The cabin seemed like a secret place, hidden from the world for many years. Mark felt a strange feeling inside. He was surprised to find such a place, deep in the forest. Who had built the cabin? Who had lived there? Why had they left? He walked closer and touched the wood. It was cold and rough. The smell of old wood and earth filled the air. Mark looked around. There were no signs of people nearby, no footprints, no fire pit. Only nature was there, slowly covering the cabin like a blanket. His scientific mind started working fast. Maybe this cabin belonged to someone who studied the forest or the rocks. Maybe it was a place for hunting or resting during long walks. But something told Mark this cabin was special. He wanted to learn more. He found a small window and looked inside. The room was dark, but he could see a table, some chairs, and shelves. With old objects, carefully, Mark pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, breaking the silence of the forest. Inside, dust covered everything. The floor was made of wooden boards, some of which looked weak and broken. Sunlight came through the windows and showed small particles floating in the air. Mark walked slowly, looking at the furniture. There were boxes, books, and tools. Found an old oil lamp and blew the dust away. The cabin was full of stories waiting to be told. On a table, Mark found a leather-bound book. It was heavy, and the cover was worn out. He opened it and saw pages filled with writing. Was careful, but sometimes hurried. The words talked about rocks, minerals, and the land around the forest. There were also drawings of strange shapes and maps. Mark was amazed. This was not just a cabin. It was a laboratory, a place of discovery. Mark sat down and started reading the journal. The writer described how he had found rare stones and strange formations. He talked about a cave nearby, full of crystals that shined like stars. The writer was a geologist too, but no one had heard of him before. The last pages of the journal stopped suddenly. It seemed like the writer had to leave quickly or something had happened. Mark's heart beat faster. It felt like he had found a secret treasure. The old geologist had made important discoveries but disappeared without a trace. Mark knew his trip had just become much more than a simple study of rocks. He decided he would try to find the cave and learn the truth behind this story. As the sun went down, Mark set up his tent near the cabin. He made a small fire and thought about what he had found. The forest seemed alive with mystery. That night, under the stars, Mark dreamed about crystals glowing and stories waiting to be told. He knew that tomorrow would bring new adventures and maybe the greatest discovery of his life. Mark slept with excitement, but also respect for the unknown. The forest was quiet, but deep inside, it held secrets that only brave hearts like Mark's could find. His journey had changed, and he was ready to follow the path laid by the forgotten geologist. The woods whispered softly, inviting him to discover what lay hidden beneath the earth. Mark woke up early the next morning. The cold air filled his lungs as he stepped outside the old cabin. The forest was quiet except for birds singing far away. The sun was just rising, casting soft orange light through the tall trees. Mark felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had found the cabin and the journal. But now he needed to understand more about the story hidden inside. He packed his bag with the journal carefully wrapped in a cloth. He also took his camera, notebook, and some water. Mark planned to explore the area around the cabin to see if he could find the cave that the old geologist had written about. The journal had several notes and rough maps, but the handwriting was sometimes hard to read. Still, Mark believed these clues were important. As he walked away from the cabin, Mark looked closely at the trees and rocks. He noticed some stones on the ground that were different from the others. They sparkled faintly under the morning sun. Mark knelt down and picked one up. It was smooth, but heavier than usual. He knew this could be the rare mineral the old geologist had mentioned. His excitement grew stronger. Mark continued following the directions from the journal. The old maps showed small symbols and lines pointing to certain landmarks: a large oak tree, a rock shaped like a face, and a fallen log. Mark searched carefully, checking each sign. When he reached the oak tree, he found carvings in the bark. The letters were old, but still visible. They matched the symbols in the journal. It was like the old geologist had left a secret trail for someone to find. Walking deeper into the forest, Mark felt a sense of connection to the past. He imagined the old man who had lived here long ago, walking these same paths, studying the land and the rocks. Who was he? Why did he live alone in the forest? Why had he disappeared? These questions made Mark more determined to discover the truth. After several hours of walking and searching, Mark came to a steep hill, covered with bushes and loose stones. The journal had mentioned a cave near a steep slope. Mark looked carefully and spotted a narrow opening between two large rocks. The entrance was hidden by branches and leaves, but it was there. His heart raced with excitement. Mark cleared the branches and stepped closer. The air around the cave entrance was cooler and smelled of damp earth and minerals. He took a deep breath and shone his flashlight inside. The cave was dark and quiet, but the walls glistened with tiny crystals reflecting the light. It was like a hidden world beneath the forest floor. Inside the cave, Mark moved slowly and carefully. The floor was uneven and covered with small stones. The walls had strange shapes and colors he had never seen before. Some crystals were clear like glass. Others were blue, green, or even purple. Mark took many photos and notes. He collected a few small samples, making sure not to damage the cave. As he went deeper, Mark found a small chamber filled with large crystal formations. It looked like frozen water, shining with soft light. Mark felt amazed and peaceful. I understood why the old geologist had been so fascinated by this place. This cave was a treasure of nature, full of wonders waiting to be studied. Mark stayed in the cave for a long time, exploring every corner. He thought about the old geologist, who had first found these crystals. The journal had said the minerals were rare and might change how scientists understood the Earth's history. Mark felt proud to be part of this discovery. But he also knew this was only the beginning. After leaving the cave, Mark sat outside and looked at the forest. The day was warm, and the sunlight made the leaves glow. He thought about how to share this discovery with the world. He wanted to be careful because this place was fragile and special. He decided to keep the location secret for now, to protect it from damage. Mark returned to the cabin and spent the evening studying the journal again. He found more notes about the minerals, properties, and ideas for future research. The old geologist seemed like a man ahead of his time, working alone but with great passion. Mark felt connected to him, like a bridge between past and present. That night, Mark wrote a message to his family, telling them about his discovery and how safe he was. He knew this journey was important, but also risky. The forest was beautiful, but wild, and the secrets it held were powerful. Mark fell asleep with a feeling of hope and wonder in the days that followed. Mark sent samples to trusted scientists to test and learn more. The results surprised everyone. The minerals were unlike any others found before. Some had unusual chemical structures. Others had strong colors and shine. Scientists began to realize that this discovery could lead to new inventions and better understanding of the Earth. News of Mark's find started to spread quietly among experts. Some were skeptical at first, but after seeing the evidence, many grew excited. The discovery brought attention to the forgotten cabin and the old geologist who had first explored this land. Researchers began to look into his life and work, piecing together his story from old records and letters. Mark kept returning to the forest, each time learning something new. He made careful maps and documented everything. He also worked to protect the cave and cabin from harm. The forest was a living museum, and Mark was its humble guardian. As time passed, Mark's discovery inspired others to explore and respect nature. The hidden cabin and the cave became symbols of curiosity, dedication, and the wonders waiting to be found in quiet places. Mark knew that science was not only about knowledge, but also about respect for the earth and the stories it tells. Mark felt a deep excitement as he prepared for his next trip to the forest. The discovery of the cabin and the hidden cave was already making waves among scientists, but Mark knew there was much more to learn. He packed his gear carefully once. Again this time, with more equipment for detailed study. He took tools to measure, sample containers, a strong flashlight, and even a small portable microscope. He wanted to understand the strange crystals and minerals better, and see if the cave had even more secrets. The forest greeted Mark like an old friend as he walked along the path toward the cabin. Birds were singing, and sunlight filtered softly through the tall trees. Mark felt calm but focused. He knew that exploring the cave was not easy. It could be dangerous because of loose rocks, darkness, and narrow passages. He moved carefully, always paying attention to the ground and the walls around him. When Mark reached the cave entrance, he took a moment to breathe deeply. The air was cool and smelled fresh with earth and minerals. He switched on his flashlight and stepped inside. Slowly, the walls glittered with the strange crystals he had seen before, shining like tiny stars in the dark. Mark's eyes adjusted to the light as he went deeper into the cave. The cave was bigger than Mark had remembered. It stretched far back, twisting and turning like a secret tunnel. Mark followed the path carefully, sometimes crouching under low rocks, sometimes stepping over small pools of clear water. The walls were covered with more crystals, some large, some small, and in colors he had never seen before. There were blues that looked like deep ocean water, greens like fresh leaves, purples like the evening sky. Mark stopped at a place where the cave opened into a wide chamber. The ceiling was high, and the walls were covered with sparkling stones that looked like diamonds. The light from his flashlight reflected everywhere, making the whole chamber shine. Mark took out his camera and took many pictures. He also collected tiny pieces of crystals from the floor, being careful not to damage the cave. He set up his portable microscope and looked closely at the crystals. The shapes were unusual. Many had patterns and colors that did not match any known minerals. Mark took detailed notes and sketches. He realized these minerals might be new to science, something very rare and valuable for research. While exploring, Mark found strange marks on some rocks near the cave floor. They looked like tiny scratches or symbols. He thought maybe the old geologist who had lived in the cabin had made these marks to guide himself or to study the crystals better. Mark carefully copied the symbols into his notebook. These signs added more mystery to the cave. As Mark moved deeper, he noticed the temperature was cooler and the air was fresher. He felt peaceful and calm in the quiet dark. This place felt alive with history and secrets. He wondered how long the cave had been hidden and how many people had never seen its wonders. After hours inside the cave, Mark decided to rest near the chamber. He ate some food and drank water while looking around. The silence was comforting but also full of meaning. Mark thought about the old geologist who had first found this cave and minerals. That man must have been brave and passionate to explore alone and make such discoveries. Mark also knew the cave had to be protected. Its fragile crystals and delicate environment could be damaged if too many people came. He planned to work with experts to create rules and ways to keep the cave safe while still letting scientists study it after leaving the cave. Mark walked back slowly through the forest. He felt happy and proud, but also thoughtful. The discovery could change how people understood the earth and its minerals. These crystals might have uses in new technologies, medicine, or industry. Mark imagined how scientists might learn from them for years to come. Back at the cabin, Mark spent the evening reading more from the old journal. The writer had described experiments and ideas about the minerals. Some notes talked about how these stones might have formed deep inside the earth during times no one remembered. The old geologist's passion was clear in every page. Mark wrote letters and reports to scientists sharing what he had found. Soon, experts from universities and research centers sent their own teams to study the cave and the minerals. They worked carefully, respecting the environment. Together, they began to understand the true importance of the discovery. News of the hidden cave and the rare crystals spread beyond the science world. Journalists and documentarians wanted to tell the story of the cabin in the woods and the man who found it again. Mark agreed to interviews, always careful to protect the location. He wanted the world to know about the beauty and mystery of nature, but also to respect it. Mark's discovery reminded people that the earth still had many secrets. Even in places far from cities and towns, wonders waited for those curious and brave enough to find them. The story of the cabin and the cave inspired others to explore, learn, and care for the natural world. Mark felt grateful for the journey he had taken from a simple walk in the forest to uncovering one of the most amazing mineral discoveries of his life. He looked forward to the future, knowing there were more mysteries waiting beneath the ground and in the quiet woods. Mark's discovery quickly caught the attention of many people. Scientists were amazed by the new minerals he found in the hidden cave. Some of them could not believe such a place existed in the quiet forest, untouched for so many years. News spread slowly at first, but then grew faster. Researchers from different parts of the world wanted to learn more about the crystals and the story behind the cabin. Mark worked hard to share his findings. He sent detailed reports to universities and geological organizations. He also showed his photographs and samples. Many experts were excited to study these minerals because they had unique shapes and colors. Some minerals seemed to have properties that could be useful in technology and medicine. For example, a few could conduct electricity better than usual or glow faintly in the dark. Scientists saw great potential for future inventions. At the same time, historians and local people became curious about the old geologist who had lived in the cabin long ago. They searched old records, letters, and newspapers to find his story. They discovered that the man's name was Henry Collins. He was a quiet and dedicated scientist who loved exploring alone. Henry had disappeared many years before, and no one knew what had happened to him. His work was mostly forgotten until Mark found the cabin and the journal. The story of Henry Collins touched many people's hearts. He had spent years studying the land, making careful notes, and searching for something special. Henry's discovery had been hidden by time, but now it was coming to light again. Some people felt inspired by his courage and passion for science. They believed his life showed the power of curiosity and patience. Documentaries and news articles were made about the cabin, the cave, and the rare minerals. Mark appeared in some of these stories, sharing what he had learned. He always spoke respectfully about Henry Collins and the forest that protected the cave. Mark wanted people to understand the importance of preserving such places and respecting nature's gifts. As the attention grew, scientists worked together to protect the site. They created plans to keep the cave safe from damage and pollution. Only approved experts were allowed to enter the cave, and they followed strict rules to avoid harming the crystals. The forest around the cabin was declared a protected area, so it would stay quiet and untouched. Mark felt proud to be part of this effort. He believed that discovery was not just about fame or money, but about caring for the earth and sharing knowledge. The rare minerals brought new hope for science, and the story of the cabin reminded people that great things could be found in unexpected places. In the months that followed, many scientific studies were published about the minerals. Researchers found new ways to use them in electronics, medicine, and energy storage. Some minerals had strong antibacterial qualities, which might help fight infections. Others were very strong in light, which could be useful for building new materials. Mark's discovery opened a door to new possibilities for the future. Meanwhile, the story of Henry Collins encouraged young scientists and explorers. Many people visited the area near the forest's edge, hoping to feel close to the place where the cabin stood. Mark gave talks and lectures, telling the tale of the forgotten geologist and the hidden cave. He reminded everyone that science often requires patience, hard work, and respect for nature. The discovery also sparked conversations about how many more secrets the earth might hold. If such an amazing cave was hidden in a quiet forest, what else could be waiting to be found? Mark hoped that his work would inspire others to explore with care and wonder. Years later, Mark looked back on his discovery with gratitude. The cabin, in the woods and the shining crystals, had changed his life. They had also changed the way people saw the forest and its treasures. Mark knew that many discoveries come from simple curiosity and the courage to follow it. The forest remained quiet and protected. The cabin, though old, became a symbol of human passion and the mysteries of the natural world. Mark continued his work, always remembering the day he found the hidden path and stepped into a story that shocked and inspired the world. Years passed since Mark first found the cabin deep in the woods. The story of his discovery had reached many people. Scientists continued to study the rare minerals from the hidden cave. Their work led to new inventions and better understanding of the Earth's history. Mark often thought about how a simple trip to the forest had changed so much. The forest where the cabin stood became a protected place. Only special teams of scientists were allowed to enter the cave. They followed strict rules to keep the crystals safe. Mark helped create these rules because he cared deeply about the forest and its treasures. The area around the cabin was quiet, peaceful, and full of life. Animals lived freely, and the trees grew tall and strong. Mark often visited the cabin, feeling a strong connection to the past. He remembered the old journal of Henry Collins, the forgotten geologist who had first studied the land. Mark felt proud to continue Henry's work and share his passion with the world. Sometimes Mark would sit quietly on the porch of the cabin, listening to the sounds of the forest and thinking about the journey. The minerals found in the cave had brought new hope to science. Some helped create better medicines that could fight diseases. Others were used to build lighter and stronger materials for machines and technology. Mark watched as young scientists studied the crystals with wonder and excitement. The discovery had opened new doors and inspired many. Mark also shared the story of Henry Collins with schools and communities. He wanted people to know that great discoveries can come from simple curiosity and a love of nature. Henry's life taught that even quiet, lonely work could change the world. Hope this message would encourage others to explore and care for the earth. As time went on, Mark wrote books and gave talks about his adventures. He told the story of the cabin, the hidden cave, and the sparkling crystals. His words reached many hearts, reminding people to respect the natural world and its mysteries. Mark believed that the earth still held many secrets, waiting for those who were brave and kind enough to find them. Mark's discovery became more than just a scientific achievement. It was a reminder of hope curiosity, and the power of nature. The cabin in the woods and the hidden cave showed that the world still had wonders to offer. Mark's life was changed forever, but he knew the true treasure was the chance to learn and share. Sometimes, when Mark walked in the forest, he felt a quiet joy. The trees, the animals, and the earth all seemed to welcome him. The journey that began with a hidden path had become a story of discovery and respect. Mark knew that many more secrets waited in the world, and he was ready to find them step by step.